What if I told you that the most terrifying thing in your life isn't hiding under your bed or lurking in the shadows of your closet? What if the real horror is living right next door, smiling at you every morning, waving as you leave for work? We've all seen the movies. The monster in the attic, the ghost in the basement, the creature in the woods. But those stories are fiction, designed to make us feel safe because we can turn off the screen and tell ourselves it's not real. But there's one type of horror you can't escape, one that follows you home because it is home. The neighbor who watches your house a little too closely. The friendly face that knows your schedule better than you do. The person who has a key to your building, who knows when you're alone, who hears every conversation through paper-thin walls. That person isn't a monster from a horror film. They're real, they're close, and sometimes they're capable of things that would make any movie monster look tame. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that will change the way you look at your neighborhood forever. A story about Sarah Mitchell, a woman who thought she'd found the perfect quiet street to start her new life. She had no idea that moving to Maple Drive would become the worst decision she ever made. Because on Maple Drive, everyone seems normal. Everyone seems friendly. But behind those smiles and polite waves, something dark was growing. And Sarah was about to discover that the real monsters don't need fangs or claws. They just need opportunity. Before we begin, drop a comment below and tell me, what city are you watching from? I want to know where my audience is tuning in from around the world. Now let me take you into Sarah's nightmare. Sarah Mitchell had always been careful. She researched neighborhoods, read crime statistics, checked school ratings, even though she didn't have kids. When she found the listing for 47 Maple Drive, it seemed too good to be true. A charming two-bedroom cottage with a white picket fence in a quiet suburb where people actually knew their neighbors' names. The kind of place where kids still rode bikes until the streetlights came on. The moving truck pulled up on a sunny Saturday in April. Within minutes, neighbors appeared like clockwork. There was Margaret from across the street, a retired teacher with perfectly maintained rose bushes who brought fresh cookies still warm from the oven. Tom and Linda Chen from next door, a friendly couple in their 40s who offered to help carry boxes. And then there was David Crowley from the house directly behind hers, separated only by their backyards and a low wooden fence. David was different from the others, quieter. He stood at the property line watching the move with an intensity that made Sarah's skin prickle, though she couldn't say why. He was average in every way. Medium height, brown hair starting to thin, glasses that reflected the afternoon sun. He worked from home, he told her later. Something with computers. He kept odd hours. If you ever need anything, he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes, I'm usually around. The first few weeks were perfect. Sarah fell into a comfortable routine. Morning coffee on the porch, evening walks around the block, weekend barbecues with the Chens. Margaret would wave from her garden, always ready with neighborhood gossip delivered in conspiratorial whispers over the fence. It was everything Sarah had wanted after years in a sterile city apartment, where she'd never learned her neighbors' names. But small things started to feel wrong. Her mail would be slightly disturbed, as if someone had rifled through it before she got home. She'd find her gate unlatched when she was certain she'd locked it. Trash cans moved just slightly from where she'd placed them. Little things, explainable things. The kind of things you convince yourself you're imagining because the alternative is too unsettling to consider. Then came the night she couldn't explain away. Sarah woke at 2:47 a.m. to the sound of footsteps in her backyard. Slow, deliberate footsteps crunching through the leaves she hadn't raked yet. Her bedroom was on the second floor overlooking the yard. She crept to the window, heart hammering against her ribs, and peered through the curtain. A figure stood in the middle of her lawn, face tilted up toward her window. Even in the darkness, she recognized the silhouette. David Crowley. He stood completely still for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then, as if he'd accomplished whatever he'd come to do, he turned and walked back through the gap in the fence to his own property. Sarah didn't sleep the rest of that night. She sat in her bed with her phone in hand, finger hovering over 911, trying to convince herself she'd imagined it, What would she tell the police? That her neighbor was standing in his own backyard? That he looked up at her window? It sounded paranoid even in her own head, but the next morning, she found something that made her blood run cold. In the dirt beneath her bedroom window where the figure had stood, there was a perfect circle cleared of leaves, and in the center of that circle, arranged with deliberate care, were personal items she recognized. A grocery receipt from her trash, a hair tie she'd lost weeks ago, a photo of her that had been in a frame inside her house, a frame that was now empty on her living room shelf. Someone had been inside her home. Someone had been watching her for weeks, collecting pieces of her life like trophies, and that someone lived just 30 feet away, separated only by a wooden fence that suddenly seemed far too flimsy. Sarah's perfect neighborhood, her safe haven, had become a prison. And she was about to learn that David Crowley wasn't just a strange neighbor with boundary issues. He was something far worse. Something that had been hiding in plain sight, protected by the veneer of suburban normalcy, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal his true nature. This is the story of what happened on Maple Drive. A story about trust, isolation, and the terrifying realization that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones we invite into our lives without ever knowing what they really are. Sarah spent the next week documenting everything. She started a journal, noting every strange occurrence with dates and times. The pattern was undeniable once she started paying attention. David's bedroom light would turn on exactly 2 minutes after hers turned off each night. His car would leave his driveway within 5 minutes of her leaving for work every morning. When she worked from home, she'd catch glimpses of him in his backyard, positioned where he had a clear view of her kitchen window. She installed cameras. Nothing obvious, just a doorbell camera, and one pointed at her backyard. The footage confirmed her fears. David appeared in her yard at least 3 times a week, always between 2 and 4 a.m. He never tried to break in. He just stood there, watching. Sometimes he'd walk the perimeter of her house, running his fingers along the siding. Once she watched in horror as he stood on her back porch for 20 minutes, his face pressed against the sliding glass door, cupped hands blocking the glare so he could see inside. She went to the police. Officer Martinez listened politely to her story, reviewed her footage, and promised to have a talk with David. Technically, he's trespassing, Martinez said, but without evidence of intent to harm or attempted breaking and entering, there's not much we can do beyond a warning. The warning made things worse. David stopped coming into her yard, but his surveillance intensified in ways the cameras couldn't capture. She'd find him everywhere she went, at the grocery store, at the coffee shop downtown, in the parking lot of her gym. Always at a distance, always with that same empty smile if their eyes met. Never close enough to call the police, but close enough to send a message. I'm watching. The neighborhood started to change too. Margaret stopped bringing cookies. The Chens became distant, their waves less enthusiastic. Sarah realized David had been talking to them, spinning some story about her. She was the crazy neighbor now, the paranoid woman who'd accused poor David of stalking when he was just being friendly. But then Sarah discovered something that changed everything. Late one night, unable to sleep, she started researching David online. What she found made her wish she'd never moved to Maple Drive. David Crowley wasn't his real name, and the woman who'd lived in Sarah's house before her had disappeared without a trace. Jennifer Hartley. That was the name of the woman who'd vanished. Sarah found the missing person report buried in local news archives from 2 years ago. Jennifer had lived at 47 Maple Drive for 6 months before she disappeared. The case had gone cold. No body, no evidence of foul play, just an empty house and a car abandoned at the train station. Police had ruled it a voluntary disappearance, a woman starting over, leaving her life behind. But Sarah saw something the police had missed. In the photo accompanying the news article, Jennifer looked eerily similar to Sarah. Same height, same build, same dark brown hair cut in a similar style. They could have been sisters. Sarah's hands shook as she dug deeper. She found Jennifer's social media profiles, still active in digital ghost form. The last post was a photo of Jennifer's new house, Sarah's house, with the caption, "Finally found my quiet place." The comments below were filled with friends congratulating her, telling her she deserved happiness after her divorce. One comment stood out, "Watch out for the neighbors, LOL, suburbs are full of weirdos." She needed to know more. Sarah tracked down Jennifer's best friend, Melissa Chen, through Facebook. It took 3 days of messages before Melissa agreed to meet at a coffee shop 30 minutes outside the neighborhood. Melissa arrived looking haunted, like she'd been carrying a weight for too long. "I've been waiting for someone to ask about Jenny," she said, gripping her coffee cup with white knuckles. Everyone else just accepted that she ran away. But Jenny wouldn't do that. She was finally happy. "Tell me about her last few weeks," Sarah urged. Melissa's story sent ice through Sarah's veins. Jennifer had complained about a neighbor who made her uncomfortable, a man who worked from home, who seemed to know her schedule, who she'd caught staring at her house at odd hours. She'd changed her locks, installed security cameras. The cameras had captured footage of someone in her yard at night, but the video files had been corrupted, every single one from the week before she disappeared. "The police said the corruption was just a technical glitch," Melissa said bitterly. But Jenny was smart with technology. She would have backed up those files if she'd thought something was really wrong. "Did she ever mention the name David Crowley?" Sarah asked. Melissa's face went pale. "That's him. That's the neighbor she was afraid of." Sarah showed Melissa the photos she'd taken of David. Melissa nodded immediately. "That's him." But Jenny said his name was different back then. She looked him up, tried to find information about him online, but couldn't find anything. It was like he didn't exist before moving to Maple Drive. The women sat in silence, the horrible implications settling between them. Finally, Sarah spoke. "I think David did something to Jennifer, and I think I look enough like her that he's—" She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Melissa's tears said everything. "There's more," Melissa whispered. "Jenny wasn't the first woman on Maple Drive to disappear." The Riverside Public Library's archive room smelled of old paper and dust. Sarah and Melissa spent hours poring over newspaper microfiche, searching for patterns. What they found was worse than either had imagined. Over the past 15 years, 4 women had disappeared from a 3-block radius around Maple Drive. The police had never connected the cases because they occurred years apart and in different jurisdictions. Maple Drive sat right on the boundary between 2 police precincts. Each woman had lived alone. Each was in her late 20s to mid-30s. Each had dark hair and a similar build. And each had vanished without a trace, their cases eventually going cold and being classified as voluntary disappearances. The first was Rachel Torres, 2009. The second, Amanda Bishop, 2012. Then Chloe Reeves in 2016, followed by Jennifer Hartley in 2023. Now Sarah was living in Jennifer's house, and David Crowley, or whatever his real name was, lived behind her just like he'd lived near all the others. Sarah pulled up property records on her laptop. Her stomach dropped as the pattern became undeniable. David had owned his house on Maple Drive for 16 years, since 2008, just 1 year before the first disappearance. But the property records showed something odd. The house had been purchased by someone named Daniel Crawford. There was no record of David Crowley until 2015, when he'd filed paperwork for a home office business license. He changed his name, Sarah breathed. Daniel Crawford became David Crowley. They dug deeper into Daniel Crawford's history. Court records showed he'd been investigated for stalking in 2006 in a different state, but charges were dropped when the victim, a woman named Emily Parker, failed to appear in court. Sarah felt sick as she found Emily's obituary. Car accident 2007. Single vehicle crash late at night on a rural road. "This has been going on for nearly 20 years, Melissa said, her voice hollow, and no one ever connected the dots. Sarah's phone buzzed, a notification from her doorbell camera. Her blood ran cold as she watched the live feed. David was standing on her front porch, ringing her doorbell. He knew she wasn't home. Her car was parked at the library. He was sending a message. The footage showed him trying her door handle. When it didn't open, he peered through her front window, shading his eyes against the glass. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a key. Sarah watched in horror as he unlocked her front door and stepped inside her house. "He has a key," Sarah whispered. "Oh God, he has a key to my house." She called 911 immediately, but by the time police arrived 20 minutes later, David was gone. He claimed he'd been worried about a possible gas leak and was checking on the house as a concerned neighbor. The key? The previous owner must have given it to him for emergencies and forgotten to ask for it back. Without evidence of theft or malicious intent, the police couldn't arrest him, but they did retrieve the key. As Officer Martinez handed it to Sarah, he said something that made her blood run cold. "Ma'am, this key looks brand new, like it was just cut." David hadn't been given a key. He'd made one. And if he'd made one for the front door, how many others did he have? Sarah couldn't stay in the house, but she couldn't leave either. If she ran, David would win, and more importantly, she might be the only person who could prove what he'd done. Jennifer and the others deserved justice. She hired a locksmith to change every lock in the house, doors, windows, even the garage. Then she hired a security company to install a comprehensive system with cameras covering every angle. The technician who installed it whistled low when she explained why she needed such extensive coverage. "Lady, if you're this worried, maybe you should just move." But moving wouldn't solve anything. David would just find someone new, another woman, another victim who looked like all the others. While the security company worked, Sarah decided to search her house thoroughly. If David had been coming inside for months, or if Jennifer had left behind any clues, she needed to find them. She started in the basement, a place she rarely went because it was unfinished and creepy even before she knew about David's activities. At first, she found nothing unusual: dusty storage boxes, old paint cans, a water heater that gurgled ominously. But then she noticed something odd. The basement had dimensions that didn't quite match the floor plan of the house above. There was a gap, maybe 4 feet wide, that seemed unaccounted for. Sarah spent an hour tapping walls, searching for hollow spots. Finally, behind a metal utility shelf, she found it, a seam in the concrete wall, barely visible. When she pulled the shelf away, she discovered a small door, painted the same gray as the wall. It had no handle, just a keyhole. Her heart pounding, Sarah tried every key she could find in the house. None worked. She considered breaking the door down but decided to try something else first. She called a locksmith who specialized in old homes. When he arrived and examined the lock, his expression grew serious. "This is a custom lock," he said. "Pretty sophisticated. Someone went to effort to keep this door secure." He picked it in 20 minutes. The door swung open to reveal a crawl space that extended under the addition at the back of the house. Sarah had to duck to enter. She used her phone's flashlight to illuminate the space. What she saw made her knees buckle. The walls were covered with photographs, dozens of them, hundreds, all of women. Some were candid shots taken from a distance. Others were closer, more intimate. Women sleeping, women showering behind frosted glass, women in their homes thinking they were alone. Sarah recognized Jennifer immediately, and Amanda, and Chloe. Each woman had a section of wall dedicated to them, with photos arranged chronologically, showing months or years of surveillance. But the largest section still being filled was dedicated to Sarah. Her hand shaking, she took photos of everything with her phone. Then she saw something even more disturbing. In the far corner of the crawl space sat a collection of items: jewelry, clothing, personal effects, trophies from his victims. And sitting on top of the pile was a driver's license, Jennifer Hartley's driver's license. Sarah heard a sound above her, footsteps on the basement stairs. Someone was in her house, and she was trapped in David's secret room. Sarah's mind raced. The security company workers had left an hour ago. She'd locked all the doors. No one should be able to get in, but the footsteps were real, heavy and deliberate, moving across her basement floor. "Sarah," David's voice called out, friendly and concerned. "Sarah, are you down here? I saw your car outside and your front door was open. I wanted to make sure you were okay." Her front door hadn't been open. He was lying, creating a cover story for being in her house. Sarah killed her phone's flashlight and held her breath. The narrow crawlspace door was still ajar behind her. If David looked in the right direction, he'd see it immediately. "I know you've been stressed," David continued, his footsteps moving closer. "I know you've been asking questions about Jennifer. People in the neighborhood are worried about you, Sarah. They think you might be having some kind of breakdown." He was positioning her as unstable, Sarah realized. If something happened to her, he'd already laid the groundwork for everyone to believe she'd had a mental health crisis. "I just want to help," David said. He was right outside the crawl space now. Sarah could see his shadow through the crack in the door. "I know you found my photography hobby. I should have told you. I'm an amateur photographer. Sometimes I take pictures around the neighborhood without asking. I know it seems weird, but it's art, Sarah. Just art." Every word was calculated, she realized. He was giving himself an excuse for the photos while simultaneously threatening her. He knew she'd found his collection. He'd probably known she was down here the whole time. Sarah made a decision. She couldn't hide. She had to face him. She pushed the door open and stepped out of the crawl space, her phone held up, recording. "Then explain Jennifer's driver's license, David. Explain why you have belongings from 4 missing women." For just a second, David's mask slipped. His friendly expression melted away, replaced by something cold and hungry. Then, just as quickly, the mask returned. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice had changed. It was flat now, devoid of the artificial warmth. "You're trespassing in a space that isn't part of your property, Sarah. That crawl space extends under my yard. You broke into my property." "Your property?" Sarah's voice shook, but she kept recording. "This is my basement. Check your deed," David said, smiling now. "Check where your property line actually ends. That addition was built over the boundary. The previous owners and I had an agreement. That space is legally mine." Sarah's blood ran cold. She hadn't checked the property boundaries carefully. If David was right, if that crawl space was technically on his property. "But you know what?" David took a step closer. "We can work this out. Neighbors should help each other, right? You're upset, you're stressed, you've had a hard time adjusting to suburban life. Why don't I help you relax? I could make you some tea. We could talk about this." Everything in Sarah screamed at her to run, but her phone was recording. She needed him to say something incriminating, something the police couldn't ignore. "What happened to Jennifer?" Sarah asked, backing toward the basement stairs. David's smile widened. Jennifer understood. Eventually. They all understand eventually. The fear is what makes them real, Sarah. The fear is what transforms them from boring suburban women into something beautiful, something worth preserving. He took another step forward. "And you, Sarah, you're going to be the most beautiful one yet, because you've been afraid longer than any of the others. You've ripened perfectly." Sarah ran. Sarah burst up the basement stairs, David's footsteps thundering behind her. She'd left her keys on the kitchen counter. If she could just reach them, get to her car. David's hand caught her ankle on the top step. She fell hard, her phone skittering across the kitchen floor. He dragged her backward, and Sarah kicked out frantically, her heel connecting with his face. He grunted, and his grip loosened just enough for her to scramble forward. She grabbed her keys and ran for the front door. Locked. In her panic, she'd forgotten she just had all the locks changed. Her shaking hands fumbled with the deadbolt. Behind her, David had reached the top of the basement stairs, blood streaming from his nose. "There's nowhere to go, Sarah," he said calmly, pulling a knife from his pocket. "You're just making this harder than it needs to be." The deadbolt finally turned. Sarah threw open the door and ran screaming into the street. "Help! Someone help me!" Maple Drive was empty. It was 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. Everyone was at work. The perfect time for David to make his move. Sarah ran toward Margaret's house, pounding on the door. "Margaret, call the police, please." No answer. Margaret's car was gone. Sarah tried the Chen's house next, also empty. Every house she tried was empty or no one answered. She was alone on a street full of homes, and David was walking steadily toward her, no longer rushing. He knew she had nowhere to go. Sarah's only option was to run. She sprinted toward the main road 3 blocks away. If she could reach the commercial area, there would be witnesses, safety and crowds. But David knew the neighborhood better than she did. He cut through the Hendersons' backyard, emerging ahead of her on the street. Sarah reversed direction, running back toward her house. Her phone. She needed her phone to call 911. She burst back through her front door and grabbed her phone from the kitchen floor. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unlock it. David appeared in the doorway, breathing hard, his smile gone. Now he just looked angry. "Stupid," he hissed. "You're making this so much harder than it has to be. Jennifer was smart. She understood by the end. But you..." Sarah's phone connected to 911. "I need help. 47 Maple Drive, he's trying to kill me." David lunged forward and slapped the phone from her hand. It shattered against the wall, but it didn't matter. The call had connected. The 911 operator had heard her address. "They'll be too late," David said, raising his knife. "They're always too late." Sarah ran again, this time up the stairs to the second floor. She locked herself in her bedroom and pushed her dresser against the door. Through her bedroom window, she could see the street below. Still empty. No police cars yet. David's footsteps climbed the stairs slowly, deliberately. "You know what I love about old houses, Sarah? Hollow core doors. They're not meant for security. They're just meant for privacy." The knife punched through the door once, twice. Wood splintered. Sarah looked around frantically for a weapon. Nothing. Just books and lamps and the window. She was on the second floor, but there was a roof over the front porch. If she could climb out? The bedroom door burst open just as Sarah scrambled through the window. And on the street below, police sirens finally began to wail. Sarah clung to the porch roof, her feet slipping on the old shingles. Below her, 2 police cars screeched to a halt. Officers poured out, weapons drawn. "He's inside," Sarah screamed. "Second floor. He has a knife." David appeared at her bedroom window. For a moment, Sarah thought he might come after her, even with police below. But instead, his expression transformed. The rage melted away, replaced by confusion and fear. When he called down to the officers, his voice was shaky and bewildered. "Thank God you're here. This woman broke into my property. She's been harassing me for weeks. I just came over to check on her because I was worried, and she attacked me." He touched his bloody nose for emphasis. Sarah wanted to scream. Even now, he was manipulating the situation. 2 officers climbed through the front window to help Sarah down, while 2 more entered the house. She heard them talking to David, heard his convincing performance as the concerned neighbor dealing with an unstable woman. By the time Sarah's feet touched solid ground, she was sobbing with frustration. "He's lying," she told Officer Martinez, who'd arrived in the second car. "He's been stalking me. He killed Jennifer Hartley and 3 other women. I have proof. In the basement, there's a crawl space." "Ma'am, slow down," Martinez said gently, but Sarah could see the skepticism in his eyes. David had done his job well over the past weeks, painting her as paranoid and irrational. "My phone," Sarah said desperately. "I was recording him. He admitted everything. Check my phone. It's on my kitchen floor." Martinez sent an officer to retrieve it. While they waited, David was escorted outside. He looked terrified, the perfect victim. "I don't understand what's happening," he said to the officers. "I was just trying to help." But then the officer returned with Sarah's phone. The screen was shattered, but it still worked. Martinez played the video Sarah had recorded in the basement. His expression changed as he heard David's words. "The fear is what makes them real. You're going to be the most beautiful one yet. Check the basement," Martinez said to his officers, his voice hard. "There's supposed to be a crawl space with evidence." They found everything. The photographs, the trophies, Jennifer's driver's license, jewelry belonging to Amanda Bishop, a bracelet that had belonged to Rachel Torres. Everything Sarah had seen. David's mask cracked completely. He stopped protesting his innocence and simply went silent, his face blank. By the time they led him to the police car in handcuffs, neighbors had begun emerging from their houses, drawn by the commotion. Margaret stood on her porch, hands over her mouth. The Chens watched from their driveway. Horror struck. But the worst discovery came 3 days later, when cadaver dogs searched David's property. In his backyard, buried under what he'd claimed was a meditation garden, they found human remains. Not 4 bodies, 7. 3 women no one had even known were missing. The trial lasted 6 months. David never spoke, never explained, never showed remorse. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury took less than 3 hours to convict him on 7 counts of first-degree murder. Sarah attended every day of the trial. She owed it to Jennifer, to Amanda, to all of them. She looked David in the eyes as the judge sentenced him to life without parole, and this time, she wasn't afraid. But even as they led him away, David turned and smiled at Sarah one last time, and she realized with chilling certainty that he wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was only sorry he'd gotten caught. Sarah Mitchell still lives on Maple Drive. Some people thought she was crazy for staying, but she refuses to let David Crowley take anything else from her. She turned her nightmare into purpose, founding a nonprofit that helps identify connections between cold cases and raises awareness about stalking and violence against women. The house at 47 Maple Drive has been renovated. Sarah sealed the crawl space and turned her basement into an office where she works on her advocacy. Margaret brings cookies again, though they both acknowledge the weight of what happened. The Chens check on her regularly, apologizing endlessly for not believing her sooner. But Sarah learned something important from her experience on Maple Drive. Monsters are real. They don't have fangs or claws. They have driver's licenses and mortgages. They wave hello in the morning and put out their trash on Tuesday nights. They live next door and know your name. The scariest part isn't that monsters exist. It's that they look just like everyone else. They blend in. They seem normal. And by the time you realize what they really are, it might be too late. Fear doesn't come from monsters lurking in the dark. Fear comes from the realization that the person you've been waving to every morning could be capable of unspeakable things. Fear comes from understanding that evil doesn't announce itself. It smiles at you. It offers to help carry your groceries. It lives right next door. So tonight, when you're home safe in your house, take a moment to think about your neighbors. Really think about them. How well do you actually know them? What do they do when no one's watching? And if something felt wrong, would you trust your instincts or would you convince yourself you're being paranoid? Sarah's story ended with justice. But for every story like hers, there are others where the warning signs were ignored, where the victim was written off as crazy, where the monster got away with it. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and remember, the monsters are real, and they're closer than you think. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please subscribe to the channel for more true crime horror stories. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Share this video with someone who loves horror stories, and leave a comment below telling us, do you know your neighbors? Have you ever had a creepy neighbor experience? We read every comment. Thank you for watching, and remember, lock your doors tonight.